And you're very welcome to the Racing Room with AK Bets. And with Champions Weekend now behind us, I think we can all agree we're going to fully turn our attention to the jumps, because as every bloke will tell you, flat just doesn't get the blood pumping as much as those big, juicy obstacles. Delighted to be joined by Tony Calvin, Harry Stewart-Moore and Anthony AK Bets Kaminskas. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit early for my little lewd reference there, but you know, come on, it's Monday morning. It's the start of a new week, and I'm looking forward to the jump, so I'm allowed and entitled to be very excited about it. Look, I mentioned the last flat big meeting of the year, Champions Weekend. We're going to come back to, I guess, the merits of holding Champions Weekend late in October, a little bit later on in the show. But in terms of betting meeting for you, how did it go? I did notice, obviously, with Kyprios winning, Sharon winning, I thought, geez, you could lose a few quid today, AK. Did the actual big race itself turn things around, or how did you go?
Yeah, big race turned it around. Didn't turn it around back to even, but it stopped the flow of blood anyway. Yeah, it wasn't great. We in our infinite wisdom decided to just push a load of prices out on the day. Bet really hard, the short ones even bet really hard on the show. So it was we were topping show prices and stuff like that, and it probably backfired a small bit. But yeah, business was good, business was booming, and the punters left happy from our side, basically.
Yeah, well, we were talking this time last week, and you had pushed the prices out, and he had come good on all the football results. So look, these things happen, swings around, but definitely, I would say, and Matt was a bit of a turn up for the books there. I mean, 40-1. Yeah, I don't think I saw anyone give him a favourable mention.
Yeah, no, that was the best result in the book for us as well, out of everything that ran in the race. So it was the perfect result. But yeah, like I said, it wasn't enough to swing it around, unfortunately. But
fair enough.
Win some, lose some.
Win some, you lose some. Right. Okay, we'll get into the racing in just a second. But look, I guess we should start with the news that the BHA are going to have to deal with an Alphonse Grande appeal. Connections have decided they are not accepting the verdict handed out last Tuesday. The verdict was as expected, and Alphonse Grande was thrown out of the race for going over the permitted 6 strikes of the whip. There's been a lengthy suspension for Mr. James Bowen as well. And Harry, I'm going to start with you on this, because it does seem like Connections, and I know you're involved in this, so you're quite limited on what you can and cannot say, but nonetheless, an overview here. This is a pretty big case, is it not, in terms of the BHA standing on this issue?
I should start by saying I'm instructed by the Connections and by Jamie. So as you say, there's not much I can say. Look, from our point of view, it's a running and riding inquiry, a glorified one over an important race. I can't really speak for what the BHA, might have at stake on it. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy around the rules. We saw yesterday, in fairness to them, and Twitter exploding over VAR as well, and saying that shouldn't have anything to do with football. These are not particularly straightforward processes. But listen, Hugh, from our point of view, we're not going to get involved in the politics of it. Yes. And we're just going to fight it on the rules. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think we had a chance. So that's where we're at. That doesn't mean I'm not going to, I'm very happy to talk more broadly about how we got here, but obviously I won't be discussing the individual merits of this one, because it's going to go before a panel.
Yeah, no, and that's totally fair enough. And we will talk more broadly, I guess, about the issues at stake here. But TC, the first thing to say is that this ruling and the subsequent disqualification from the Sarwich has really kind of focused the mind about these whip rules and what has been happening away from the limelight of the big race meetings, perhaps Royal Ascot's, Cheltenham's, Derby's and stuff. Richard Forrester wrote a really good piece, strong piece, and he's been very consistent in his view about the fallacy that is the whip rules, that actually these rules have had a huge toll on the sport itself that probably hasn't been highlighted to the extent that we've seen from last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think the PGA put out a statement as well saying, I think collectively it was over 10 years worth of kind of like suspensions in this period, which is mad. We always talk about, these, whip bans being handed out in a very blasé manner, and it's like, so if they're giving 14 days for some offences, I mean that's a serious amount of money if you're a jockey, and it's an even more serious amount of money if you're a struggling jockey. So yeah, I mean, like I said, that's brought that into focus. And I think here, I mean, I think this is a massive case. I mean, it might not be big in kind of like, the terms of, what the outcome is going to be, but it's the BHA, a lot of credibility rests on the outcome of this case. Now, there's a lot, we'll park the, disqualifications on the day, for a moment here. If they wait 4 days, they send it to the whip review committee and they say, yes, it's 10 strikes, disqualification in place. Jamie Powell gets 28 days, which is mind-blowing, isn't it, really? If the appeal is successful and everyone's assuming it's going to be, rightly or wrongly, everyone's assuming it's going to be questioning the number of strikes. So it's not 10 strikes, so therefore it gets the race back. The jockey will still get a ban, but the Alphonse Grande doesn't get chucked out. If that appeal is successful, I mean, obviously, a lot of people question their credibility anyway. But I mean, the BHA are going to be absolutely in tatters here, which is why there's been a bit of a PR offensive.
Brant O'Shea went on ITV's The Morning Line and was questioned by both Ollie Bell and Matt Chapman. I don't know what you thought of his performance, TC. I thought it was very weak. I thought some of his answers were verging on disrespectful to not just the two lads who were asking the questions, but to the people who were listening in. I mean, one answer in particular, when Matt Chapman asked, do you think that in terms of the horse riding to the finish and the whip and what effect it had on the horse, he said, well, I can't speak for the horse, which I thought was an absolute bullshit answer to give, to excuse my French. What did you make of his performance?
I thought it was an opportunity missed by ITV. I think Matt Chapman just meandered into.
But I thought, did they not answer? They asked fairly fair questions, I thought.
I know, but Matt's got an agenda with the BHA. They say they won't talk to him. And then he just went off on tangents about, give me the details of this study that Julie Harrington mentioned at a conference in Asia last year. I mean, it's just in that. I thought it lacked structure. I think the question here is, should he have been on there on the first place, because an appeal's ongoing. Although he wasn't really specific about that, he was obviously on there because of Alphonse Grande, and it was all relating to that. So the question is, should he have been on there anyway? And obviously they were putting out tweets on Friday about, this is why we're doing it with the whip rules. So
sorry, Tony, can I just jump in quickly on the point that Hugh raised about the answer to the question I think that Matt had asked was hitting the horse 10 times rather than 9 times, that wouldn't have hurt the horse or affected its welfare. And I think his answer to that was, I don't know, Matt, I can't speak for the horse. That's why this is all so complicated. That question, look, he was on live TV and it probably just came out. But the suggestion that we regulate horse racing by, interviewing horses, whether they can or can't speak is absolutely absurd. But it really goes to, I think, the heart of this, which is, what is the BHA's position on 10 times over 9? Does it become a welfare issue at that point? Because no one, all the videos on the website, BHA website, suggest that pretty much you could deploy the whip as often as you want and it wouldn't hurt the horse. So either we know and we are confident that deploying the whip 10 times is not a welfare issue any more than deploying it 9 times, in which case fine, or we don't, in which case we shouldn't be doing it. But what you can't have is a BHA going, well, we don't really know, actually, if because we can't speak to horses, we don't know the difference between 9 and 10, because at that point, well, then why have you drawn any lines, made any rules at all?
This is where he could have at least garnered some respect when he came out and says, well, I know it doesn't hurt the horse, but from our point of view, we're trying to safeguard against people who feel the optics of striking a horse 10 times is too many, and that's why we're doing it. He said, I can't speak for the horse, and he sounded like a complete idiot.
Well, I'm not going to go as far as that, but he did.
I will.
On the subject, on the basis that he's the spokesman for the BHA, I'm going to talk about the BHA rather than him personally. But it does seem to me to go to the very heart of this, which is that we were all told that this is not a welfare issue. I remember Julie Harrington, I think it was on Nick Luck, saying it's all about perception. But we do seem to row back on that from time to time when it suits, to suddenly go, oh, there's a bit of a welfare issue in here. Is it or isn't it? And how does the sport defend itself on this subject if it can't make its mind up?
I think the end game here is, I mean, there's been a couple of references to, Hong Kong, they wouldn't want horses thrown out for overuse of the whip and stuff like that. I think the end game here is, I can see this 10 strikes rule, instant disqualification. I can see that going. Everything in English and Irish racing is geared to the World Pool, Hong Kong punters. They're the cash cow. And obviously we had the situation with the Irish Champion Stakes not being broadcast on ITV because of Japanese punters wanted it earlier rather than the normal 4 p.m. slot. So I think if we're going down the path of putting all our eggs in one basket as foreign money coming into the sport, be it betting, be it whatever, I think
because Tony frozen for anyone else,
the domestic audience.
Yeah, sorry, you froze there for a second. Yeah, but I take your points, and look, it's a mess, and I know, Harry, obviously you're duty bound here in terms of what you can say, but it'll be very interesting to see how this goes, from a legal standpoint, and whether or not the connections manage to get this decision overturned or how it plays out. I think an awful lot is riding on this for Julie Harrington, for everybody involved in the BJHA with these rules. And they can crow all they like that they've the huge focus groups. They've had huge input from all different parties to get to these rules. People are not happy with these rules ultimately, and I think they're standing on very thin ice here. And look, we'll wait and see what happens, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on. Let's talk about the racing itself. I didn't realise Clive Smith had passed away. And Clive Smith, obviously straight away, Kauto Star comes to mind. He had some brilliant horses over the years. It was masterminded his as well. But anyway, he really, Kauto Star, I think, is one of my favourite national hunt horses of all time. And Clive Smith always came across as very reserved. Even when he won the Cheltenham Gold Cup, I was there that day, watched him jump the last fence with my head in my hands because I backed him for about 16 months. But I always remember Clive Smith being very measured in his response, never got too carried away, high or low either way. How did you find him?
Obviously it was always a guest of Betfair in the marquee, and he was very good with his time and stuff like that. Obviously he fell out with Paul Nicholls in the later stages, but he was incredibly lucky. Everyone talks about Kauto Star, but Masterminded was not far in talent on his day. So he was very lucky there. He didn't really have many horses, but he certainly got lucky, and he liked to bet.
Did he like a bet? Did he? Yeah.
Oh,
wasn't in that box for nothing, you.
There's a funny story. Ruby Wall said in the Racing Post that he wasn't a punter. Now, if he's not a punter, then I don't know anybody was. He used to tell me. I got on quite well with him, and got invited to the parties and stuff like that. He was having, in the 80s, before he got shut down with them, he was having 250 grands on horses at Royal Ascot. I remember the name of the horse. A Juddmonte horse won, and I think that was the end of his days with Victor. There was a funny story one year. He was in the marquee, and we were having a chat. This was late morning, and it was started to rain. And he said, "I think I've left the car window open." So he went back, shut the car window, and he came back. And I said, "Was it open?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I was bored on the way back." So he said, I topped up. I had another 80 grand on Kauto Star when it won the Gold Cup that year. That when he did like a bet. I mean, say he wasn't a punter is no, it's not true.
Well, if he's not a punter,
but he could afford it. I mean, the guy sold a golf course for 8 million, and it's a very successful businessman. So yeah, I mean, obviously 80 grand to him is like,
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, obviously, like Kauto Star that whole time as well, and then Denman the following year, Kauto Star winning the Gold Cup back. It was a brilliant time for the 3 Mile Chase division, and when you hear someone like that guys, it kind of just checks you a little bit, and you're reminded of our mortality, and like, you know, you get one go at this life, and it's funny. Just, you know, I never met him, so I've no reason to, but it's like I associate him with a big time in my life, 2 or 3 years, and those horses. So it's funny. It's funny.
From my point of view, my first ever at Cheltenham was the Cheltenham where Denman won the World Cup and won the Gold Cup, and Masterminded won the Champion Chase as well. And
amazing.
I think it was we had tickets. I think, for top of my head, we had tickets for the Wednesday. The first day I was meant to go, and it was called off for the win that year, was it? And then it was it was 10 or 11 races both days. It was like Champion Chase followed by World Hurdle. It was absolutely, I like what a start to try and get involved in horse racing. Like, absolutely unreal at the track. Masterminded, unreal. I was at Kempton as well when Kauto Star won that fifth King George. I think that was the race that I was on Sublimity each way. Just finished fourth, got done. It's an absolute disaster. Wow. Yeah, unbelievable.
No, it was great. A great time. Brave Inca. That was a brilliant Hardy Eustace, Brave Inca, Max Joy, division of the hurling as well. War of Attrition, Mouse War. It was a brilliant time for horse racing.
Yeah.
And now we've got Constitution Hill,
Yeah, we got Constitution Hill. Yeah, I know. We're hanging on. Right, TC, here's a question for you. Champions Day. Let's get into the weekend if we can. If I ask you to pick one horse to run for your life, A versus B, in the bumper division, is it Stradivarius or Kyprios? Who are you taking in the bumper division of the flat racing calendar? Who's the better horse?
I think we're going to have to go with Kyprios, aren't we? He's not a great horse, but he's only rated 120. I mean, he's won countless Group 1s and
doesn't know how to lose. He doesn't know how to lose. He's brilliant.
I mean, he didn't win his 2 races in 2023, but he nearly kind of lost his life before that. It's remarkable to get him back, but this year he's better than ever, and he's like you said, he's a bit of a cash machine, and he's you all over, isn't he? You must be.
Listen, I mean, come on. I mean, he's a model horse for me. Like, Christ Almighty.
Like, from a bookmaker point of view, you can get tempted like a furlong and a half, a furlong out, thinking, "Geez, he's gonna get chinned here," and it always just wins 2 or 3 lengths, doesn't he? Like, ITV
did a brilliant analysis of a sectional race with Ruby, who picked it out, and basically Sweet William came at him at the straight, and for 3 seconds it looked like Sweet William was going to go past him, and then, as Ruby pointed out, Ryan Moore got right down into the saddle and said, "Right, go on," and he went on, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Kind of Blue won the sprint. It was a kind of a pick'em day, wasn't it? Is he Blue Point Son, TC, or do I have that right? No, or Point Blue Son?
He's from a family of James Fanshaw's owners. That the family, this is the 3rd sibling to actually win that race. So we'll come on to a question about the ground later on, but it was really stuff. It was a lot deeper. Ascot didn't cover themselves with glory by not giving out going stick readings for 48 hours until Saturday mornings. So
they didn't cover themselves in glory with you big weatherman head.
I know, but it's like, it's important. But when they did, the going stick readings suggest it was kind of like good to soft, and it ended up being heavy. There were heavy ground times. So what else did we have? Obviously we had Matt winning a very rough race there to come to Anthony's rescue.
Economics bled, right? So a lot of people, including myself, had the Kyprios economics double TC, and I knew it wasn't going to happen from about a furlong and a half out. He just wasn't his normal self. He has bled after the race. There was a video on Twitter of him being cleaned up or whatever before he came back in, and this is the 2nd time he's bled. I remember, like, a horse that I love, a filly mare called Arena, and she was such a talented horse. She bled the first time and she was never the same since. You can draw a long list of horses where bleeding has had a huge impact on them. I wonder, is this guy in trouble now? Economics.
I think you have to be. Some jurisdictions, I think if they bleed twice, don't think they let them race. But he bled really badly after the Dante. I don't know how bad this particular bleed was, and but he's obviously had his problems. He had a big. He obviously missed the Derby after the Dante, after the bleed there. So it's big question marks about whether they'll just pack him off the stud now. I mean, like I said, and it's going to resurface when it gets really grueling, and that's what it was on Saturday. We had Kalpana was very, very impressive for the judgment team. They've got another. They had Blue Stocking as well, so they got another top-notch Mile 4 horse for next season if they stay in training. And Sharon won the again. I tell you, the Sharon
controversial QE2, was it?
Well, I just could not. There were three separate interference parts of interference with Sylvester de Souza just literally going across Factor Chevelle three times independently.
And not changing his stick hand, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I like you. I was watching the ITV coverage of where it was on in the background, and Ruby highlighted that. I just couldn't believe it. So I went for the stewards report, and they just gave him a caution. I thought he was in for. We're talking about jockey bands. I thought he was in for a long holiday, and he couldn't have had any qualms and any comeback of if he got quite a substantial suspension for that, because like I said, it wasn't one time, it was three times, but they decided to let him off there. Perhaps they didn't want any really wouldn't want any bad headlines on a big day. But saying that, Oisin Murphy got 2 days earlier for pretty minimal offence really, but again
can I ask you, okay, just as a matter of fact, I don't know if you did the sums on this, like if Economics or Calandigan had won,
Calandigan was definitely the one.
Would that have blown you up? Like, would that have been serious liabilities?
It probably would have been our biggest losing day, I'd say. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was that. Yeah, it was that heavy. Yeah.
Whoa! And there wasn't much in it, man.
I know. Well, I was watching at Leicester, and I was like, get stuck in there, just didn't look like it was going to get out. And oh god, I don't know what it traded in running because it still looked the winner, and we were just we were very lucky, basically, very very lucky. You run that again, I think we're screwed there basically. So
I have visions of you like Barry Dennis watching, the horse that he laid. I'm going to come on to Barry Dennis in a minute on the brilliant YouTube documentary that if you haven't seen it, we'll come back to this in a minute. My visions of you standing there go.
I gave it the oi in fairness. Yeah, with the oi, I was at Leopardstown and I let out a small roar there because the lads were texting me what the potential liabilities were before the race, and I was like, oh, God's sake. I'm going to get this back at Leopardstown anyway.
Everyone went, oh, AK must have got his Pepsi finally. Record time. Right. Okay, let's move on if we can. So there's a story over here at the moment, and maybe a lot of people in the UK might not be aware, but Dublin Airport Authority is very close to reaching its cap on the amount of flights that can come in and out of the country in terms of passenger numbers, because there is a limit every year that is set by Fingal County Council on the amount of people that can come in and out of the Dublin airport. We're almost at that cap at the moment. Michael O'Leary has been pulling his hair out, trying to get the cap restriction lifted or increased to accommodate more numbers, because it is impacting all the airlines that are coming in, of which Ryanair obviously is a big player. But the knock-on story and knock-on problem potentially for racing fans is that it might stop Irish fans getting to Cheltenham, AK, because Ryanair want to bring 10,000 more fans to Cheltenham next season. But if this cap is not lifted and the restrictions remain as they are, he will not be able to do so. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'll give you a brief synopsis of what my Sunday mornings look like. So I wake up, I bring the two kids to a soft play area. I buy the Business Post and the Sunday Times. I let them off to run riot, and I read the Business Post and the Sunday Times. And in Ireland, the Business Post, the last couple of weeks, they've been very heavy on Michael O'Leary quotes, just regarding the Dublin airport cap, basically, and the airport being at capacity, essentially, and any extra slots that airlines are applying for, they're all just being declined, essentially. So I was probably the only one in the soft play area in Dublin on Sunday morning watching videos of Michael O'Leary at the Oireachtas committee meeting, and they had a slide up at this meeting. He was presenting to the committee, essentially, and he was saying that we've applied for all these different slots, and he just said Christmas, and he was talking how they'd been knocked back at Christmas, and one of the things was Cheltenham. He said we bring all these people over at Cheltenham. He said we have 10,000 extra seats that we apply for at Cheltenham. And at present, if the cap remains in place as it is, which seems to be the way they're going to go unless there's serious pressure put on, those 10,000 seats, O'Leary was saying in this meeting, would be zero. There'll be no seats, essentially, no additional seats, because the cap will have been reached, essentially. So I was just thinking, I'm sat there thinking, Jesus, that's not great for Cheltenham. I was like, we've got to get over there with our pitch and everything. And I was just thinking how that potentially might affect the attendance at Cheltenham if 10,000 people, I don't know if that, I presume it's over the course of the week, can't attend essentially. And in an environment where Cheltenham's probably on the slight decline and they're struggling to get people through the door, I haven't seen this issue talked about in horse racing at all. I was just flagging it essentially, flagged it on our WhatsApp group. If you're traveling from Ireland to Cheltenham, it might be prudent to have a look at flights and stuff like that now, because this could potentially, if it's not lifted, have a decent knock-on effect for horse racing.
Yeah, and I've been following this story too for a while now. And I say a while because I thought when this was first mooted by Michael O'Leary back in March of this year, that by the time we came to the end of year, something would have been resolved ultimately, and they would have found an answer to the problem. But it's still going on. And this is where Cheltenham starts to come into focus, obviously, because it's, 3 months after the turn of Christmas. And, Eamon Ryan has been on plenty of radio shows and newspaper interviews and been asked. He's the Green Party leader, or he was the previous, since stepped down, and was asked, why can't the government step in here? I mean, this is going to have a huge impact on the Irish economy. To stop passenger numbers coming in, be they tourists or people coming back, it's going to have a huge impact on the economy at important times of the year. And the knock-on effect, as you say, for Cheltenham could be that 10,000 fewer Irish fans get to travel in a year where Cheltenham are hoping to reverse the negative attendance slide that's been happening over the last few years. So look, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Nothing has been resolved. Fingal County Council are notoriously slow about these things. Yeah. They don't seem too bothered either way about trying to increase the cap. So look, we'll watch this space. But look, it's something we thought we should flag. We did ask Michael O'Leary to come on, but no reply.
So my main takeout from that section is that Anthony's not father of the year, is he? He just
no.
ducks her in a playpen for an hour, reads his two papers.
Daddy, I'm hanging on the strings for an hour. Shut up, I'm reading the Business Post, son.
I'm only on page 32. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My one bit of peace, sort of like chaos around me, but I'm in my peace zone reading the papers. Yeah. That's my.
Tell me this, Harry. When Lee Mottershead approached you for comment on his article in the Racing Post last week about bookies that are doing the dirty on clients and not paying out when they should, why didn't you insist that he use one of your new pictures with your snazzy new haircut and not a picture from 1974 in college? What's going on there?
Yeah, luckily that one didn't make it into the hard copy version. But yeah, as I said, I looked like I was about to start doing magic tricks from that one, and so I was very pleased it making it into the hard copy. Yeah, no, Racing Post. Big story called withdrawal symptoms that everyone's been moaning about. Got some interesting people, Nick Goff, various others, to comment on experiences and views. And, basically, I think that the common theme was that this has been, bookmakers are bookmakers, punters are punters. They'll do what they do. The whole point of the regulator is to kind of stand in the middle and try and soften the edges of that. And it just hasn't really worked.
Watch, kids, as magician Harry makes 6 whip strokes on Alphonse the Grande disappear before your very eyes.
I was just about to make that joke. Yeah.
Very good.
Where they gone?
Moving on.
Dear.
Yeah, but look, I guess in terms of the content, TC, since the Bookies Dream and the William Hill episode were kind of blown up on Twitter, an awful lot more people have started to come forward about bookies not paying up when they should, not adhering to bets that have won, and they're entitled to the money here. So maybe this will put the skates underneath them here and force them to actually change their approach.
I don't think so. I think they're just. I just think they're absolutely terrified of what the Gambling Commission can do. I mean, some of the fines that's been handed out have been ridiculous. And it was William Hill, nearly £20 million in fines, etc. Look, it's obviously gone to ridiculous levels. And we had one guy posted a thread on Twitter in response to the questions thread. We're not going to deal with it here because he just gave chapter and verse of what happened to him. He already asked for his deposit limits to be increased. And
Read the punter, yeah, it's worth it. It's on Twitter underneath there. Go and read it. It's well worth a read. Go on, yeah.
It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening what's going on. And we get to a point whereby now, if you've got money in any account, you just can't take it out because if you take it out, you can't get it back in again.
Yeah.
But Anthony, you answer me this. Like, so Fred, the grumpy punter here, and go and read, right, his complaint here. Like, he is in a situation where he's wanted to get his loss limits lifted, and but the bookmaker was asking him about financial transactions to him and his wife. Like, what in the name of Christ is going on, if that's the level of detail they're going into?
Yeah, I obviously don't agree with it, but I can slightly see the other side as well. Now, it is just a terrified of, when in the audit, did you get all this extra stuff and it contributing to a fine? It's just like it's an unbelievably overcautious approach from bookmakers that don't want to be fined. The system's broken, essentially. The system, it's not acceptable, but I can also see why it's happening as well.
Being overly,
yeah.
Sorry, just being overly cynical about this. Bookmakers have always used, Big Core have always used their regulatory duties to try and get hold of people's private financial information in order to wriggle out of bets, or basically just to profile
I think you'd be
punters who they're a bit
surprised, though,
concerned
Harry.
about.
I do get that in certain instances. Definitely at the top echelons of people that are just rinsing through multiple accounts.
It doesn't have to be the top echelons. It does not have to be the top echelons.
It
They can do it
have
over
to.
anyone.
Yeah,
and we're not just talking about.
Sorry. Just the point I want to make is they can do it for everyone, but it's not from a restriction and trying to find out information on a punter having a couple of $100 on. The trading aspect of the business doesn't care about that guy. Like, it's irrelevant. It's another department, essentially. I don't accept that, Anthony, because I've had lots of instances of information that is being asked for by the regulatory team, and the next thing you know is you get. But that regulatory team isn't sharing it with trading. It's not from a restricting a bets point of view. Is the point?
No, it is. It is. Absolutely, it is. I've had that. And what I agree that they're not concerned over a couple of £100, but they're concerned about where it might be going, whether this is an account that's being seeded over time to get bigger. So I'm saying is that's what I'm talking about, of the very few cases of people that are doing that on a large scale. I agree with you in that respect. I think the guy that's having 300 or £200, or he's won £200 or something like that, the trading team couldn't care about that guy. He just doesn't even feature on any kind of report at all. He's irrelevant for trading. And the information you glean that you're asking him for isn't passed on to trading aren't factoring it into anything. It's just an irrelevant. So from that point of view, it doesn't matter. Well, trading are not the be all and end all. I mean, there are departments who don't sit in trading and still try to close down accounts, and they won't go anywhere.
Sure, but they don't talk to trading, is what I'm saying.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Absolutely, that may well be right. But my point is simply that with these affordability checks, what we might see, along with all the other problems that we're getting, is people going, oh my God, we can ask for even more information when we're trying to wriggle out of a bet here. That's all I'm really saying, and that they have always abused their regulatory function. So I completely agree that there's uncertainty around it, and I can see why they're all very sensitive as TC refers to that seemingly absurdly large fine. Well, we just end up in the same situation.
If you go on, under the TC shout out for questions this week, and go and look at Grumpy Punter's tweet, and you'll get a sense of what he's talking about here. It's a long one, as we said, but it's some of it is just really, it's difficult to swallow. Right, let's move on to Barry Dennis. I mentioned him, and AK, maybe you can kick us off here, because Barry Dennis, a stalwart of the Bookies ring, a throwback to the old school, and that documentary is just brilliant. I watched it again for the second time when I heard he passed away, because I just wanted to remind myself of the character that he was. Christ almighty, the diet that he was going through at one stage in his life, right, where he basically wouldn't eat from breakfast until 11 o'clock at night when he got back from the dogs after a full day's racing in the Bookies ring, and he'd have a steak, 2 eggs, bucket of chips, 3 pieces of bread, and a bottle of scotch before he went to bed. How did he live into his 80s if that's the diet?
It's when you're doing it in the morning that you should be really.
Yeah, no, I think Barry Dennis, like, just from my own point of view, just growing up, I think Channel 4 racing, it really just, I know everyone gets to a certain age and they think this, but it really does feel like it was the pinnacle era of horse racing, really. And what they were doing, and they were doing it was just unbelievable. Just as to bring people into the sport, and just from an interest point of view, and there's characters. everyone wants characters. Like there's no characters about. Like he was. You might not agree with him, but on certain things, but like for bringing people in and showing the color of what they were doing. Like at the end of the day, you just stood there and you're taking a few bets, but the way he was able to convey it it was theatre. It was theatre every single day. Like to be honest with you, when I get a lad starting with us on the racetrack, and the guy that runs our racetrack operation now, Dave, first thing I do is I get them to watch that documentary. Just have a look at that and like try and learn a bit about what it was like. And you can learn a lot. Like the lads on our team say that I'm a mental driver, but the start of that documentary is off the charts for driving. Like the driving
around this tiny country lane, beeping the horn like a lunatic for fear that something's coming in the opposite direction and he won't be able to move out of the way in time.
It's unreal. But then again, there's some cracking lines in it like that really do show what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, from just standing around in the wet to the woman stood the bit that always cracks me up is the woman 10 minutes from the end at Ascot stood in asking what the favourite is, and just how terse and more terse his replies get. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely brilliant. Like
£2.50 each way on the favourite piece. No, you can't. But you're going to make 5p if it places here.
And she's asking like, what's the favourite? And he tells her, and he's like, well, isn't that the same price? And he's like, yeah, the joint favourites. And he's like, okay, you make your mind up. You just stand out of the way a second. He's just trying to move her out of the way. It's pure gold. And I didn't even realise that I've had a few small dealings with his son, and I didn't realise it was his son because of and he texted me afterwards after we put something up on Twitter there last week, saying, "Oh, thanks for the kind words about Dad." And I actually didn't even realise he was Barry's son, just because Barry's surname was actually Middleton and not Dennis. But for a legacy in the game, it's unbelievable. It's a cracking watch.
I thought Ben Keith spoke really well about him on ITV as well. He made a lovely reference to him. Look, you must have so many memories of that time.
Yeah, Barry Dennis was a very early adopter of Betfair, and I think he actually thought it was a really good thing in the early stages, and I think he came to regret that stance, and he moved away from that position at all. But maybe the Channel 4 days, the morning line, well, they wouldn't be able to get away with what they did then. I mean, obviously it was all betting focused. You know, he used to call Leslie Graham the posh bird. It used to be, you know, it was a real sexist kind of program there, and
it was a male dominated world, really. You know,
when you had Leslie Graham, they had
but in general,
you know, they had Tanya, obviously, and obviously her Barry and Big Mac obviously got on really well together and stuff like that. And yeah, it was a different time, but he really kind of like personified that era. I mean, some of the stuff. I mean, a lot of the time he used to go to Lingfield all the time. I mean, there'd be literally nobody there, and he'd still turn up and, you know, shout from the rooftops. But I agree with what you said about what Ben said about him. He was. It was different gear in those days, and when he was top dog, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he was. You know, and again, what's the name of the documentary? Bookies, Lou, is it? Anyway, look, you'll find it on YouTube. If you type Barry Dennis into YouTube, you'll find it.
There was a funny one-liner, wasn't he? He looked into the camera. I think there's a 3-second clip on Twitter. He say, "Do you want to be a fucking bookmaker now?" After
he got stumped.
And there's another good one in it where they do 10 grand because the lad hasn't cut the price quickly enough, and some guy picks them up
20 to 1 shot.
And he's just stood there, and I just, like, anyone who's worked on course can just relate to it, because you're just waiting to get caught. If you make a mistake and you're slow, you'll get caught, and you can't get it back.
The young guy looking there, he's completely crestfallen. And Barry Dennis is glaring at him like, you fucked up there, didn't you?
I'd like to see his reaction if one of his staff overpaid by 3,750 quid, like a certain bookmaker there is. Can you imagine that?
No steak and scotch for dinner that night, I can tell you. Right. Anyway, look, an absolute character, and it was great listening to the memories of him as well. Okay, next on the list, guys. So Racing TV, this gambling legislation has come to pass in Ireland, and it's going to be a couple of years, we think, before it will actually be able to be implemented. So 2026, they're saying. But Racing TV say they're now pretty dismayed and are resigned to the fact that they're going to have to leave the Irish market here. It's a funny one, really, for me, because, you know, and I've been making this point for the last couple of years when it was apparent that this was coming down the tracks. And my point was always, like, because I work for the national broadcaster here, RTE, and I thought I can understand, you know, from a public television point of view, why they want to curtail gambling advertising, and why, you know, on free-to-air national broadcaster, they want to restrict what is being presented in terms of gambling. I can understand that, the way the world is going. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. Why they choose to also include a subscription racing channel in that bracket, to me, is crazy. People deliberately pay for the racing TV channel because they are racing fans. Presumably, they're also punters, and most of them are. So why racing TV, aka, are in the same bracket as RTE television on this is completely over my head. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'd be of the same opinion as you, to be honest with you. Just the direction of travel with all these things, you can see why a free-to-air national broadcaster, you can see why it's a little bit more stringent there. And like you say, people, if you're paying for racing TV, which isn't cheap, if you're paying for that and you're following horse racing to that level, and you're paying for that channel basically because you want a bit more in-depth analysis. And it's a bit like
the fellow who goes and subscribes to the porno channel, and then the government says, well, you're not allowed to show, you know, naked bodies between such and such an hour. But, like, I'm paying for porn here. What the hell do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen? Like, racing TV is literally gambling and racing. That's what it is.
I hadn't considered that analogy, but I'll factor that into my analysis next week. But yeah, no, I think it's just, these things are just politicians that just want votes, and it's where they're like, what's the old Tony Benn line about signposts and weathercocks? The weathercocks, like they'll bow to public opinion, whatever way the wind's blowing. These people they'll latch themselves onto the wind. Like, you need signposts, you need people that are pointing you in the right direction and understand subjects. And there's obviously this clear lack of understanding of. There's a clear lack of understanding of the industry, and from probably somebody who just wants to be re-elected, essentially, and finding the best way to do that.
At the risk of giving racing TV execs free legal advice, Harry, is there any case here that racing TV could take and say, look, this shouldn't apply to us. We are not the mainstream media. We are not, you know, public service broadcasting. We are a specific racing channel. We should be exempt. Like, is there any route down that you think they could try?
Well, look, obviously it's Irish law, so it'd be difficult for me to comment. I think if it's going to be done by statute, I mean, statute law in most countries' jurisdictions is paramount. Not much you can do to get around it. So, look, who knows? Maybe there are rules, and it depends exactly how it would go through. Maybe they can make arguments about restraint of trade or competition, or you know, perhaps even European law, which of course you're still allowed to deploy on that side of the Irish Sea. So that might that there might be something in that. But look, I don't know his answer, Hugh, really.
And then maybe
the Irish racing was obviously a thing before racing TV got the rights as well. If race, like, it's hard to know which way this is going to go because we don't have all the information, do we? We're speculating whether racing TV is still involved in whether it's a small bluff, whether they can't pivot to splitting out the advertising, and we don't know their numbers. We don't know how viable and unviable that is. Irish racing was on a channel previously that can split, I believe. So I'd imagine the downside to Irish racing potentially isn't as huge as potentially has been made out, but a lot of unknowns. If Irish racing comes off terrestrial, if it comes off TV, terrestrial TV or paid TV, the only place you'll be able to watch it is on the AKBet app, live streaming.
There you go. I mean, and TC, you're not buying the racing TV poor mouth argument. I know you're a bit cynical about that.
Yeah, obviously the position is that, you know, we can't do it, we can't afford it, but Sky Sports Racing, although they've got you'd have thought they'd have kind of like, you know, greater riches behind them. Sky Sports Racing said they've already done it. They've got a feed up and ready to go. But, you know, this is not going to come until 2026 by all accounts. So Racing TV got a lot of time to sort things out, and you'll be able to get around it with content. You know, you might have more bookmaker kind of like interviews and sponsorships and stuff, but yeah, there'll be a way around it.
Yeah, I'm sure Paul Nicholls and Nicky Henderson and the like, Stan Skelton, are delighted at the prospect of Willie Mullins coming over to England more often, TC, and hoovering up all that juicy prize money you got over there and trying to win the trainers title for a second year in a row. He looks like he's got a bit of focus, though, that this is going to be a big aim of his this year.
Yeah, he's got 3 in at Cheltenham on Friday. You'd think he'd have a lot more when the decks come through for Saturday, and he's just come out and said they're going to be more proactive. They're going to come over him more. It'll be interesting. He's never ever had a runner in, the Betfair Chase, for example. So, and that's a 200 grand race. So, maybe expect to see him there. I mean, if he wants to win the trainers title over here, he'll win it, basically.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting how much he decides to commit to it as well. Like, obviously the Irish program is pretty thick and heavy as well, but he has a battalion of horses that he can send over. So look, it'll be interesting. And yeah, look, I wonder what kind of firepower the likes of Nichols, who's pretty keen to get the title back. Henderson as well. I know Skelton was disappointed to miss out last week. He thought last year he'd beaten everybody he had to beat except for WP Mullins. So look, we'll see what happens there. Right. In terms of the betting practices that we all undertake and the financial consequences of what we enjoy doing, putting on our little accumulators on a Saturday morning when I text Alan Cawley and say, give me the likely winners or whatever. This obviously has knock-on consequences, AK, for people who want to apply for mortgages, example, with banks. And, even your little fiver to AK bets on deposit here is now being treated same as somebody nearly who was a problem depositing most of their income in there. How do you see this shaping up?
It's crazy, like banks, like risk managers in banks. If you think the betting industry is bad, you won't want to be employing the risk managers that work in banks, do they? Like, I love the audacity of banks that have to go cap in hand for bailouts, telling people how to spend their own money. Like, it's an insane situation that we live in. I think what people adapt, bookmakers adapt, punters adapt, whether people get different bank accounts for betting. Like, this is where all the problems come from. People try to exercise their own free will to spend their own money, and that usually results in extra bank accounts, moving money around. Banks shouldn't be telling you if you can have a bet with your disposable income. But listen, I've got a mortgage and applying for mortgages and stuff like that. These are the conversations. Imagine what my conversation with my mortgage advisor was like about that when I was punting full time. It was a great crack. But like it just blows my mind that that's a thing. I think bookmakers adapt. Like, you deposit with a bookmaker, it probably won't say the bookmaker's name on your bank statement. It'll probably say, there's very random ones like Who Internet, and there's major bookmakers don't usually display their own name on your bank statement. It comes through as another name. It's ridiculous that people having to try and circumvent ways to spend their money of their own free will. Essentially, it's just stupid.
No, it is. It does seem crazy.
Well, wait until affordability checks start getting onto your credit score as well. I mean, that will be something else.
Doomed. Told you.
Doomed. No, the happy bunch are back. Right. Last one before we talk about questions then, TC, and you can sum this up if you want. And Duffield and Kelleway are going to team up in a new training partnership, which is maybe a sign of the times. There's a little bit of a surprise about this, given, I guess, the relative success recently for Kelleway as well in particular. And also Haydock are offering cheap and cheerful tickets for next season. Roll up, get them early while you can.
Yeah, talk about the negativity. It says something, didn't it? The most fun we've had in this podcast this time around is the death of a person. So yeah, we are.
Jesus, Grim Reapers are what?
Yeah, just very quickly. I got an email through from Haydock saying any fixture, get tickets in 2025 for a tenner. So yeah, that's obviously trying to get money in early. That's another sign of the times for Jockey Club. And Duffield and Gay Kelleway. Gay Kelleway is moving up north, and so they're going to join forces. And just as a cost-saving exercise, you can't make it.
Can I ask a question on that? Like, cost-saving exercise, is the cost saved really that huge? Say if you've got two trainers that are maybe, I don't know, in this instance, I'm just generalizing, right? Struggling to make it pay, might not be making any money. Does joining together and one of them moving towards the other one, especially if it's up the other side of the country, so I presume you're not bringing that many owners with you. Like, what is the cost saving there? Maybe renting a yard, but like, is that really going to move the needle? It just seems to me that I obviously don't know it, but are the economies of scale there? Because you're still splitting the money 50-50, I assume, and then maybe one is bringing in more than the other, and then it gets awkward. I'd never see these working.
It's in this instance, I would imagine that both yards are probably half full. Kelleway said she's got a lot of northern owners, so it might work better on a social level from that. I imagine renting a yard in Newmarket is not cheap.
Yeah.
And if Anne Duffield's got 60 boxes, 30 are full, Kelleway's got 30 horses, then it must make sense from that point of view. But Anne Duffield's Kelleway's quite a feisty individual, but Anne Duffield's got some very strange views. You see some of her Twitter feed during COVID, it was like, what?
Really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, really, yeah. But I wouldn't say too much about that because George Duffield give you a right.
Okay, we don't want to get anybody else on our backs at the moment. We've got enough of those. Right, questions time. Thank you to everybody. We have picked out 4, and Dave Bradshaw says the Brant Dunshay line on we can't do centralized stewarding because of poor internet connectivity, because courses are obviously mainly rural. Given they can all broadcast pictures in high definition, is this credible? That was another amazing line out of his mouth in that interview, and there were a lot of dodgy lines out of his mouth. But like the suggestion that because they have poor Wi-Fi in the country, they can't get the bloody decision right because the bloody Wi-Fi's down. What the hell's going on?
I'm not going to take offense at that accent anyway, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on, is that realistic that that they don't have the technical expertise to get this sort? That's just
Wi-Fi at racecourses, even the big racecourses, is very hit and miss. But to actually come out and say that you can't do centralized steering because you can't get stable Wi-Fi, I mean, you might think it, but you don't say it. You just
it's absolutely nonsense. Like as we discussed last week, Tony Calvin was able to record a podcast in the middle of the Irish Sea, half cut at 9:30 in the morning. Like, yeah,
no, I take exception to that. I was fully cut.
Anything is possible, lads. Anything is possible. Let's have a bit of positivity here. It breaks my heart, our on-course operation, that we had to pay Elon Musk 50 quid a month to get the Starlink internet, but it's unbelievable. Like, we've a Starlink thing on our pitch. You couldn't drop the internet if there was a bloody nuclear attack. It's unbelievable. Like, get that 50 quid a month, reduce your costs, move on.
It's just another piece of evidence that the BHA haven't a clue what they're actually doing. I mean, Christ almighty, as you say, if you can get Wi-Fi in a bloody boat to Cork. Anyway, look, it's just so frustrating, that these things are peddled out and they expect us to swallow rubbish. We've had a few questions on Champions Day. We picked out Seth here, who says, Champions Day, one of the best meetings of the year. Every year it's spoiled by the ground. Competitive sprint handicaps finish like 3-mile chases. Is it time to move this back a few weeks, or dare I say, run on the all-weather? Well, obviously, just in terms of this TC, like, we know that in terms of planning, they say, well, we can't have it too close to the arc. And obviously there are other big flat meetings that take place as well. But in terms of an all-weather, is that a realistic option?
No, not really. Hey, look, it's not ideal when it's heavy in the game description. They changed the round course to the inner track, and it's just too tight, and it resulted in a lot of trouble in running. So Anthony will be happy about that because might contributed to Calandigan getting beat. But yeah, it's not ideal. The ground's always kind of like really testing, but people are moaning, but a lot of the favourites still won. If a lot of the favourites got beat, everyone will be even more up in arms.
One of the big positives, I suppose, getting my positive hat on here of British racing is the variety you have, different ground, different configurations of tracks and stuff like that. Embrace it and adapt to it. I'd say, like, it's not always going to be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. As you say, if more favourites have been beaten, there might have been more uproar. Ben Keith wants to know, what does Anthony advise young people to do if they want to become a bookmaker? Young people's game now coming in. Any advice on potential new suitors to the bookmaking industry?
Any advice? Like, you need a few quid behind you. I'd say it's if you're operating in the legal market, you'd need a few quid behind you. It's definitely a good idea just to get a grasp of, and you need, I think, probably a small bit of experience it would be helpful going in and there's two different aspects as well. If you're like, I've seen pro punters try and do bookmaking, and which is probably the way that I went into it. I worked for a bookmaker, did a bit of betting, and then went back to bookmaking for myself, essentially. Skill sets wise, you need to just absorb as much as possible from as many smart people as possible. But bookmaking in general is not about, like, one of the big, like, I think I've said it on this pod before, one of my big learnings is that price for the mass market doesn't move the needle as much as you'd hope it does. It's more customer experience, the journey, navigating around a website well, how well you interact with them from a customer services point of view. So there's been like loads of different learnings from me. I think just learning as much as possible prior to doing it, having a few quid behind you so you can adapt to die and pay to learn your lessons early on without going bust. And then probably start off in Ireland because it's cheaper to get a license.
And do lots of food vlogs.
Yes. Make sure you get your food trucks in there as well to keep you happy and in good form. Rods wants to know, I'm strongly of the view that there's an agenda coalition from ARC, BHA, Jockey Club, ROA, Major Corps, with working towards a new mandated Quango regulator with the powers bestowed from government to also be the sole betting operator under a merge with the UK Toto.
I put this question in. I put this question in because I remember Anthony saying a tote monopoly has gone from a million to 1,000 a couple of weeks ago, didn't you? And why did you say that? And that's why it kind of half links into.
Because just how expensive it is to show horse racing. I think there's breaking points for every single sport. Like if it's a declining market, it's very expensive. It costs XP in the pound to take a bet. We were even just having the discussion the other day. We were just top priced load of horses at Ascot, and it wasn't a results. It was pre-racing. And we were saying, like, half, why are we doing this sort of thing? Like, you almost don't want honestly now, just from an economics point of view, not the horse. You don't really you want horse racing. I want my horse racing product to grow. But if it's growing, I want my other sports to be growing faster. I want my other sports to grow faster than horse racing. I want everything to grow. But it makes more sense to me for my other sports and my other products to grow quicker than horse racing. That's not a good place for horse racing to be in. That's just what I think. And if it keeps getting more expensive and it's going in one direction, even if it stays as it is, we want other sports to grow quicker than horse racing. That's just the sad economic reality of how much it costs for that product compared to other products. It really isn't a good place for horse racing to be in, that you'd rather cross-sell customers. If you come in and have a horse bet, you're trying to move them to football, essentially. Yeah. It's more cost-effective. Bad.
Chris Graham says 9,000 students at Newcastle on Friday evening. The future, every course will want one a month with those kind of numbers. Well, I guess you have to have a university capable of providing that amount of students to a local track, Chris, and Newcastle is perfectly placed to do that. So, that's the perfect kind of system there, I would imagine. But yeah, 9,000 students on a Friday night. I mean, who in their right mind, not even I, could find a reason to turn down
just very quickly, I stuck there in because William Darby got in touch. First text I got on Tuesday morning was from William Darby saying, defending the student night. So it's all right for a course like his because they got 5,500 people in there. He said there was no problems with sound, about other racegoers being inconvenienced. He said they are a big positive. But so William Darby made that counterpoint. He actually named you saying
I'm spinning around. I'm out of my head. Right, last question. Lou Morrigan says, with the gambling bill, future loss of revenue from the TV side, is there potential for Irish tracks something extra back from the bookies showing the live streams? Is there? Briefly.
Claw what are you clawing at? The way it works is that Irish Racing have the deal with the broadcaster, and we pay the broadcaster essentially. So I don't think you'd want Irish Racing setting up its own channel or anything like that. Yeah, I half don't understand the question, to be honest with you. But there's not much to be clawing at, to be honest with you. Ireland has the unfortunate position, as well as all those costs, to have the turnover tax of 2% as well. So you almost don't want, you definitely don't want Irish customers betting on horse racing. Essentially, as a bookmaker, there's nothing in that.
Okay, on that bombshell, we will leave it for this week. Download the AK Bets app for all your sports and racing latest offers. My thanks to the guys, as always. We're all off to help Magic Harry channel his inner Paul Daniels and make 4 whip strokes disappear. You'll like this, folks. Not a lot, but you'll like it. Until next week, good luck.